Okay, so a while loop lets us execute a statement an unknown number of times until the statement that we choose as our conditional is no longer true. Let's pretend we want to create a number guessing game where you have to pick a number between 1 and 100, and we will tell you if you got it correct. So first, we're going to create a random number generator to pick a random number for us. Now, the details of how we're doing this are beyond the scope of this lecture, but the variable is of type random, and we'll just call it random generator. It's the name of our variable, and we will set it equal to a new random number generator. So C# has a random number generator built into it. We're going to create an instance of it, store it in a variable called random generator, and then we will say our random number is going to be equal to, and we'll ask our random generator to create a number for us between 1 and 100. Okay, so you can see here when I type this out, there are a bunch of different types of functions I can call here, but I'm going to say return a random number integer that is within a specified range, and we have our upper bound and our lower bound. Now, one thing I should note here, when the lower bound, it says inclusive lower bound, that means it's going to include this number. Exclusive upper bound means it won't include this number. So technically it'd be between 1 and 99. So we'll go ahead and say between 1 and 101 for our random number generator. All right, and now we're going to print our instructions. Guess the number between 1 and 100. Our exciting instruction pack. Now we're going to run our while loop. Now our while loop is pretty simple compared to the for loop. We just say while, and then in parentheses, we're going to have our conditional. Okay. So in our case, the way we're going to set this up is we're going to have guess, and we'll start out with guess equal to 0. Okay. Because we want to make sure our while loop runs at least once. Our random number can never be 0. And so we'll say while guess is not equal to our random number, we're going to execute the code inside of this block. And so what this says is we're going to create a variable called guess, set it equal to 0, and we will execute our game as long as whatever is guessed is not equal to our random number. And we know that at the beginning, it will never be equal to our random number because our random number goes between 1 and 100. So we will then say, enter your guess. And we will say that they're going to type something in, and we are going to then convert that to a integer using our conversion thing here. Then we will ask, so this is all stuff we've done before, and then we will ask the important question. We'll say if our guess is less than our random number, we will say guess is too low. Otherwise, if guess is greater than random number, then we'll say our guess is too high. And otherwise, we will say, so there's only one option left. Either it's too high, too low, or it's exactly right. So we'll say, guess was the random number. Now, let's review what's going to happen here. We are going to set guess equal to 0. We're going to say if guess is not equal to whatever our random number is, we're going to execute the loop. And inside our loop, we're going to ask them to enter a guess, which will convert to an integer. We'll store that in our guess variable. If guess is less than the random number, we will print that their guess was too low. If it was higher than the random number, we'll say that it's too high. Otherwise, if it's not less than or greater than, it must be exactly equal to, and we'll say that they guessed the random number. Now, in this case, when the loop executes after they guess the random number, the code will execute this conditional again and ask, is it still true that guess is not equal to the random number? Since that's no longer true, we'll exit the loop and we can print out you win at the very end. Okay, so let's test this out, make sure it works. So we're going to guess a random number. We'll guess 50, too high. We'll guess 30, too high. Guess 15, too high. 10, 5, 0, too low. 1, too low. 2. 2 was the random number. And just to make sure that this works the way we expect, and that it is in fact a random number and it's not always 2, we'll play one more time. 50's too low. 80's too high. 70's too high. 60's too low. 65's too low. 66 is too low. 68's too low. 69 was the random number. And every time we play, it'll be a different random number. Now, let's step through this code so that we can see exactly what's happening here. So again, first step, we're creating a random number generator. Not super important that you know the details here, just that we create this object, which we store in this variable, and then we ask it to create a random number for us between 1 and 101. And spoiler alert, our random number for this game is going to be 16. And then we say, we print this instruction out, guess our random number. Set our guess equal to 0, and we ask this question: is it true that guess is not equal to random number? That is true, and so we will execute our loop. So we say enter your guess, they enter the guess, and we'll say that we guess 20. So now we have our answer as a string, which we convert to an integer and store it inside of the guess variable. So we then ask this question: is guess less than 20, or is guess less than random number? So in other words, we're asking, is guess less than 16? That is not true. So we ask the next question: is it true that guess is greater than the random number? That is true. So we print out this statement. And as we talked about, we will then skip to the end of our if-else block. We come back to the top of our loop and ask this question: is it true that guess is not equal to the random number? Is that still true? It is, and so we continue with the loop. And we print out the instruction: enter your guess. We wait for an answer. This time I'll type 16, a very lucky guess. And I ask, is it true that guess is less than random number? That is not true, because they're the same. Otherwise, is it true that guess is greater than the random number? Still not true, because they're the same. So if neither of these are true, our else clause executes, and we print out that instruction. And since our guess is now exactly equal to our random number, this statement is no longer true. It is not true that guess is not equal to our random number, double negative there. And so we exit our loop and we print our final statement. Now, there are a bunch of other things we could do for this. If we wanted to make our number guessing game super sophisticated, we could keep track of the number of guesses. We could give a limit to the number of guesses. We could do all kinds of things. In fact, let's do a limit to the number of guesses. Let's say that you have turns remaining. We're going to say you get 5 turns. You get 5 turns. So every time they make a guess at the end of the loop, we're going to say turns remaining is going to be equal to whatever it was before minus 1. So we'll say turns remaining minus equal 1. We'll subtract 1 from this each time. Okay? And for our while loop, we're going to use a compound conditional, which we learned about last week. So if we're going to keep running this loop, if guess does not equal random number, and we still have turns remaining. Okay. And so let's print one more line here. Right line. You have turns left. And we'll say guesses. You have 5 guesses left. Okay. So now, just slight change here. We have our variable turns remaining. This tells us how many turns we have left. We will execute our loop as long as we haven't guessed the number and we still have turns remaining. At the start of the loop, we'll print out how many turns we have left. At the end of the loop, we'll subtract 1 from how many turns we have left. Now, one problem we have is if we exit the loop because we guessed the number correctly, we do want to print you win. But if we exit the loop because we ran out of turns, then we want to print you lose. So at the end here, instead of just printing you win, we have to ask, is it true that our last guess was equal to our random number? If so, then we will print that we won. Otherwise, we will print that you lost. Okay? So just a slight change to the ending of our program. So let's run that, make sure it works. Okay, we have 5 guesses left. 50 is too low. 75 was the random number. That's fortuitous. You won. Let's see if we can lose on purpose. So we'll run this program and we'll say, what's our guess? 50 is too low. Well, how about 40? 40 is also too low. 30 is also too low. 35 is too low. 37 is too low. And you'll notice that each time we have fewer guesses left, we guessed wrong at the very end, and so we lost. Okay, so this is our new sophisticated random number generator, but the key thing here is that we can put any conditional statement for our while loop, including a compound conditional using AND.